we're just more focused on the function of the business and making sure everything runs smoothly. But essentially, our lockdown was based on some bloke who I think was possibly illegally working 2 jobs. One of those was a security manager at one of the isolation hotels, and I think maybe he was working a second job. I don't really know the details of it. Anyway, he lied about where he was working. Eventually, I guess, after the authorities delved into it a little bit deeper, they realised that it was a bit of a cover-up to sort of try to stop them from finding out multiple sources of income, which he might not have had a visa for and things like that as well. And the lockdown was based on, I guess, they thought if he was this pizza delivery driver or whatever it is, the contacts that he would have had with a numerous amount of people in a very short amount of time would have been rife, and that they just thought they'd lost control of it. So we sort of got 3 days into lockdown, and then my phone I wasn't even watching the press conference. I guess I just assumed it was another update on how many cases and things like that as well. And all of a sudden my phone is blowing up and saying, we're back on, we're back open. So I guess I had honestly planned that we weren't going to be coming back before Christmas. Like I sort of succumbed to the fact, you know what, like I'm going to prepare for the worst and hope for the best, and all of a sudden we're back. So Amir, how are you, brother?
Good, man. How are you guys? What's going on?
Good.
Very well.
Good.
I mean, the sun is shining in all types of ways. It's great to speak to you guys again.
Appreciate that, brother.
Likewise, brother.
How have you been, Amir? How are you mentally and physically going?
Yeah, everything's good, man. Just keeping busy, keep on training, just getting everything going, man. This comp's coming up here. We've got actually a huge comp for the lifters this weekend, so we're just preparing for that. And just getting ready to start to wind down towards the end of the year, this shitty year.
Well, let's that be the first place we start then, because all right, this is probably going to be the last time I speak to you guys for this year like this. If we reflect back on this year, you know, coming to the end of November, already nearly December, which is just bonkers. What do you guys make of it? If you really took a zoom out and tried to objectively analyze yourself, how you showed up this year, who you were, your business, your profession as a coach, and even things that other people you observed in your environment, what do you guys think and reflect upon it that you can take for forthcoming years?
You go first, Amir. You go for it, brother.
All right. Honestly, all in all, it actually wasn't that bad a year. You know, obviously aside from a pandemic, but in terms of for me personally, and for the gyms and for growth, personal growth and stuff like that, it was actually a year that, you know, you'd look back on and you lived through it. Probably nobody else in our lifetime, like it won't happen again, probably, hopefully. And, you know, off the back of it, all the gyms survived, all the branches. So that was something that really positive came out of it. We launched an equipment manufacturing business off the back of it, which is still going and is still expanding. I chose to explore a different sport, get back to combat sports, which is something I used to do when I was younger, before Adonis, and you know, that reignited a lot for me, a lot of like the passion that I had for that, because obviously powerlifting competitions were cancelled for quite some time. You know, also, you know, and I think this is for all of us. I think we learned that we are all much more resilient than we thought we are, and also we learned, all of us, that there's probably some things that sets us apart compared to a lot of the other, you know, general public, because at the end of the day, during times like this, you start to realize what people are really made of, mentally, especially because you got people that panic and they just can't keep it cool, they can't keep it together, and you got some people who don't panic. They use it to figure some other things out. They get creative, and some good things come out of the back of it. Definitely learn who I can rely on. Amongst the people I work with. Grateful to all the members that stuck by us. It was great. It was great. Honestly, it was great. I wouldn't want it to happen again, but a lot of good things came out of it.
Yeah, look, I think I can back up a few of those things for sure in regards to it's given me some real confidence in how durable and versatile we can be. I know obviously probably the first time that happened to all of us all together as a facility, we were shut for sort of maybe 11 or 12 weeks. That was certainly a learning curve. And I'm sure, like everybody, we had those instances where I'll just think, what are we doing? Well, why are we, this is really, really tough. And then more days where you think to yourself, you know what? I love the fact that we're able to manipulate what we've been doing or pivot for a little while. I love the community engagement we've been able to probably increase during this time. Thanks to people like you guys who have given us opportunities to have platforms on social media and to create more content and to network with other people. I think that we've only solidified our spot as hopefully one of sort of SA's premier facilities and continue to build more of a personal touch to those members as opposed to maybe some of those bigger franchises that just don't have the ability or just didn't do that at all. I know there's a lot of members that we now have on board that said that they were previously with a bigger chain. And essentially during that first lockdown, it was a matter of your payments got turned off in week 1. And then 3 months later, they got turned back on again, and there was no communication between. There was no real sort of, care or support or love. So I certainly think that overall it's been a positive. But as I said, there's always been those times where you do doubt what you're doing. But I think if you look at the overall trajectory of the business, and I can't remember if it was maybe Athletes Authority or Orphic, there was somebody who posted up a graph a little while ago. And you look at the trajectory of your business, and from week to week, there's always ups and downs. It's almost like you look at like the stock market, you know what I mean? There's always ups and downs, but when you compare week 1 of 2020 to where we are now, we're in a much, much stronger position. And there's been weeks where there's been downs, or there's, say, for example, I'll be completely honest, for those that don't know, that are outside of Adelaide, we had a bit of a funny situation. You've probably seen it plastered all over the news, but we did plunge back into lockdown essentially 7 days ago. Fortunately enough for us, that was based on some misinformation. So 3 days later, the government pulled us out of lockdown, but we've sort of gone back into full-blown lockdown mode in regards to we'd cleared out a facility and leased out all of our equipment to our members. We'd got transitioned everything online. I think now, the second time around, we were a lot quicker to action it because we had systems and processes in place, and we'd had an opportunity to probably reevaluate those prior to this lockdown, as opposed to be honest with you, making shit up on the spot last lockdown, thinking what the hell are we doing? So we were in a much better position. And then obviously we just had to quickly sort of revert back as soon as we got the word that we were coming back to business on Sunday. We were just calling all those people and saying, get my stuff back to the facility as quick as you can. Hurry up, we're back. But yeah, if you're looking, like I said, week 1 of 2020 compared to right now, we are in a much stronger position. We've got more members and athletes than we've ever had, more traffic coming through the doors, more equipment, more revenue. But to get to that point, there's certainly had some ups and downs. Like you said, Amir, in the long run, I'm happy that it's happened. Would prefer if it didn't happen again, if we just continued this trajectory without going through that. But it's given us confidence that, you know what, we can almost survive anything, because unless all of the internet blows up and we can't use online resources.
It's just a matter of time.
I think we're pretty adaptable now, which has been great.
I like that. Thank you guys for sharing that. I wanted to actually touch on a couple things that you both have said from this. One, I'll go to you, Amir. What are the systems and processes? Because you said that, Sean. What are the systems and processes that you've created this year? I mean, this is for both of you, but starting with Amir, that have been the most important? Something that, damn, I'm glad this happened because I could create this system and process that's going to help me dramatically in the future as a business owner and health professional.
We so during the period where everything was locked down, obviously a lot more time to be able to sit in the office and do work rather than be on the gym floor. I wanted to put everything that myself and all of our coaches had learned over the years of doing what we do, basically into video format. So it's like a library we can all refer back to at any time. If one of us is absent and we need to go through, for example, how to do proper powerlifting programming, how do we start with a template, and then how you take somebody through a strength block and then peak them for competition and so on, and how to write a weight loss diet or a weight gain diet, etc., etc., etc. And then that started, and then I thought, well, hang on, let's just put this onto an online educational platform and make it freely available to all of our members, so that they can refer back to it, literally as if they were going to ask the coaches. So the coaches are always available there. So we did that, and now it's live. It's open to the world. Anybody can sign on, and we've been getting subscriptions. So we're just going to continue to add to that. So we essentially systemized that part of things, where the coach doesn't have to be there all the time for people to ask, how do I do a sumo deadlift properly? How do I set up for it? There's a 45-minute video off the top of my head, I think it's 45, 50 minutes, with complete voiceover, drawings on the screen, freezing frame, slowing it down, different angles, stuff like that, where it will explain that to them. So no matter where they are, at whatever time they are doing their deadlift, it might be late at night, might be early morning, and the coaches are not there, they can pull that video up and be guided through that movement or that concept exactly as if the coaches were there doing it. And so that allowed us to actually reduce 2 entire days of coaching on the gym floor. And now we're dedicating those 2 days to actually booking in more of our members and our clients, and actually have preferably a sit down face to face to go through their weekly, like their week that was, and plan the next week, and or have a conversation like via phone or FaceTime or something like that, to make sure that they are on the right track. They can ask us any questions and things are going well. And since doing that, engagement has been through the roof. Productivity on everybody's part, like the staff as well as the clients, has been through the roof. Everything's been better. Retention has been better. Results have been better. So that is one huge thing that came out of that, that forced us to systemize that, gave us time to systemize that, and we're just going to keep moving forward with that.
That is great. That's such a valuable system that I think is applicable to any coach or business, especially with staff, because then you don't have to constantly repeat the same kind of process, standard operating procedure.
Yeah.
Sean, what is your version of that?
Yeah, look, I think similar in regards to pretty much online has been where the majority of our industry is pushed towards. I think maybe for myself personally, streamlining to utilize one system. So I know prior to a lot of this stuff happening, I was probably a little bit spread in regards to the majority of our members would be using an online platform for programming that we'd built from scratch many years ago with a web designer. There's a few others depending on which program from an elite or semi-elite setting that was programmed. We've got sort of streamlined everybody into Team Builder. So we sort of took that extra expense and now have transitioned everybody onto one system, which makes it much easier from our point of view, from a programming sense. And from my experience, it's one of the cleanest systems. This isn't an advert or anything like that. I've got nothing to do with it personally, but have just streamlined from that point of view. And then having those pre-established like Facebook groups and things like that in place now, so that, say for example, last week, those people that transitioned over on their memberships to continue to work online were either using the team builder programming or we're doing the live Facebook sessions. The reason why I decided to do the live Facebook sessions was because sort of I found it a bit of a quicker and easier process for saving the video for them to come back and revisit. As obviously, say for example, at the moment you're recording Zoom, but I assume that you probably have to save and then upload that to Facebook as well afterwards. Or does that save itself? Or from a private group setting, we just decided to go straight to Facebook, straight to the social media. We have a private group with our members in it and go from there. So essentially, you're sort of bouncing back and forth between an online platform where you're writing programs or the online platform where you're face-to-face with the clients, and made it sort of as easy as that.
Love it. I hope people can pay attention and take something from either one of those systems and apply it. That's why I ask, because I'm thinking, well, you got to take something from this here. You got to take something from these systems you guys have created. Sean, you brought up doubt earlier in the conversation, and I know this is something everybody recognizes and has felt probably at some time this year. Amir and Sean both, but especially because you brought it up, Sean. People look at you guys, successful business owners, successful coaches, 6-figure plus businesses, who knows, probably maybe 7 figures, and they see like a superficial success, and they probably don't see as much as what goes on in here between your two ears. What do you do when doubt creeps in? What were you actually alluding to, Sean? Like, what is your self-talk when that doubt comes in, and how do you pull yourself out?
Absolutely. So I guess, especially having a young family, you're in those situations when your business has been locked down again. I know even prior to lockdown, gyms were the first thing to close. And I know that Fitness Australia sort of went into bat for us. Not that I have anything to do with them at all, but I saw a lot of their social media activity. And you start to think, well, what am I busting my guts for? Like, why am I putting in all this effort? And I don't want to get too political, but you look at all the evidence that's been provided around in Australia in particular. If we're talking about in this particular instance, there's been no cases of transmissions in probably 3 million plus visits from a perspective of from people going to the gym in Australia. And you're sort of just wondering, why is this war on our industry? And no matter how good our processes are, no matter how good our contact tracing is, no matter how safe we're keeping our community, no matter how much we're sort of abiding by the letter of the law, we're the first thing to get locked down again. And then you start to think to yourself, well, look, we've got a young family. What happens if our landlord isn't as lenient with us this time as they were last time? You think about all the insurance expenses that we've got, the staff that you obviously have to, I guess, ensure that they're getting looked after as well, because they're the people that inevitably are going to look after us when we do get back to business and things like that as well. And you start to think, why didn't I just become like a police officer? They're never like, you know what? It's solid. It's predictable. You know what? You got your set wage that you stick to, and so on and so forth. You work shit hours. You deal with the shittest 10% of people every single day. But you know what? You're security for your family. So those sorts of things, every now and again, would creep into your head when things like that happen. It's a short-term thing, but then again, I'm pretty big on mindset, and it's usually just sort of like I like to think of it like a little passing cloud in the weather. Like the cloud goes by pretty quickly, and you just reset. You try to start the day with something positive or something constructive or something that's going to have a benefit for your community and taking another step forward for your business, and you're usually back to normal pretty quickly. But certainly, I'm sure you guys can attest to. There's probably lots of business owners out there that will have times where you're thinking, like, what am I doing? Why didn't I just become a Sparky? You know what I mean? Like, go work for somebody, get a set wage here every now and again. Yeah, so that's the doubt that comes through. But as you said, it's just a passing cloud in the sky, and I find resetting, maybe do a quick little bit of meditation or mindfulness, or think about 5 things that you're grateful for. I know it all sounds pretty sort of stock standard, but I find it helps me to reset, get my eyes back on the prize again, and then go from there. And then the second that we reopen and the people come flooding back through the doors, you forget about all those things that you start to doubt yourself on during those times where you are shut down.
I appreciate your candor and honesty because I don't think a lot of people realize that you maybe had those thoughts.
Well, look, I think everybody's human, and
Yes.
I like to be open and honest as well. And you certainly you do, I guess, provide that energy to the community, and you do have a bit of sort of like your coaching bravado and things like that. And you always want to be promoting a really positive image to the community. But I think you wouldn't be human if you didn't have those doubts or have, everybody has those days where you think, shit, what am I doing? Or, you know what, I just want to have 5 minutes of quiet time here and just reset myself, and then we'll go again.
I'll go. I'll give you what goes through my mind.
Okay.
And please understand, I don't. If anything I say, like I don't mean any disrespect to anybody when I say it. It's just purely and simply, literally my thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah, like thoughts like that from time to time when things get really bad do pass through anybody's mind. For me personally, it quickly gets extinguished because I cannot and I will not, I refuse to go back to ever a 9 to 5. I cannot work for somebody else. I cannot answer to anybody else. And I don't know if this makes sense to anybody listening, but I actually like the carnage that situations like this bring. I'm happy, I'm quite comfortable with the madness of it all. I don't know if that makes any sense. I don't know if anybody can relate, but I would much prefer doing this, knowing that I'm in the driver's seat, rather than going somewhere where there is supposed security. Because I'll tell you something, there isn't any security anywhere. Right? There's just an illusion of security when you're working for somebody else, for another company, whether it's government or not. Yes, there's more security with government, stuff like that. But I refuse to let somebody over there tell me, you've got 52 weeks in a year. Look, you can have 2 to 4 of those weeks off if you want to go on a holiday. The rest of that time we'll tell you what to do. That's just my mindset. I would much rather live in this hell than in that heaven. So that's just my mindset. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
I love that. I resonate deeply with that, and I won't make this about myself. I try my best to, but I think you would be surprised, Amir, at a small minority of people who actually love the chaos like yourself and find themselves maybe thinking, not is there something wrong with me, but I wonder why I like the chaos and carnage of it all so much. It's an interesting thing. Have you ever dug into that, to why some people you think thrive under those scenarios?
I have, but I don't have the answer. I don't know what it is. I don't know why I'm like, because I don't think I was like this all the time.
Right.
Maybe I was, I don't know. But I think it's just because of weighing up the options. You know, for me personally, it's just a no-go, like doing a 9 to 5. I just won't do it, because I did it obviously, you know, when I was younger, in high school, uni, to get through as a student and stuff like that, and it just sucked, just huge balls, and I just can't do it.
A lot of shit sandwiches.
It's not me, you know. I just can't do it. I can't. I like to come and go as I please. I like to do this thing. I like to be in control of what's going on, and I won't do it. I'd rather, because I know at the end of the day, I'm not going to starve. I'm going to figure out a way,
Yes,
if this doesn't work, to make something else work. I just know that's going to happen, right? So I'm like, yeah, whatever. If all the gyms are going to get taken off me, let's just say absolute worst case scenario, I'll figure something else out. That's fine.
yeah, you sound like, and I imagine you both, you have a trust in yourself, you have a belief in yourself and your skill set to be ultimately adaptable and innovative when you need to be.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. So where I next want to take the conversation is with, again, something you said earlier, Amir. You are training more combat sport athletes now. And I took a little note here because I'm like, I want to dig into that a little bit. What do you think the most common mistakes, and Sean, I'd love to hear your thoughts too, but specifically maybe about field-based athletes, for example, unless you have some thoughts on combat sport athletes, most common mistakes the combat sport athlete makes on training themselves and governing their own health, and then the mistakes the coaches make.
So I'll start with the athletes. There's actually probably two that are very common that stick out all the time. One is ignoring strength training, thinking that they don't need it. All they need to do is just train, whatever they're doing, jiu-jitsu or boxing or wrestling or whatever it is, that's enough. That's going to suffice. And then getting absolutely clobbered by somebody who's a little bit less technical, but much stronger, getting dominated. And the other is doing too much super high intensity conditioning work too often and just absolutely burning out. And they may not even feel like they're burnt out. It's just such a normal day-to-day mode for them now that they feel normal. They feel fine. They think they feel fine, but they're actually severely in a deficit. Those are the two main ones as far as athletes are concerned, and probably like as an honorable mention would be stupid exercises like quote unquote functional shit that's still going on. The problem with it is that aside from anything else, you actually can't progress on it. You can't progressively overload on a lot of those exercises, pretty much all of those exercises that they pick. If they just spent the same amount of energy on just squat, bench, deadlift, overhead pressing, rowing, and just got strong at those would be killers. So that's in terms of athletes. In terms of coaches, especially old school coaches, sort of the same thing, but on the other side, they either think still to this day that weights make you slow or are not really useful, and that they should just drill and drill and drill. And the other is training high intensity, so like high intensity rolling or wrestling or sparring too often, way too often, and that can leave the athletes in the ground as well. And those are probably the most common things that are still in existence that I still see around. Admittedly, some athletes are waking up to it, and so are some coaches.
Well, how do you communicate to the athlete in that sense to get them on the same page? Because a lot of them are very stuck in their traditional ways. How do you communicate with them to see the benefit of the other side?
Well, a couple of ways. One is when you actually, I wrestle. So when you actually wrestle with them, and they've been doing it for much, much longer than you, but you're giving them problems, that in of itself starts to get a few cogs ticking in their brain to think about restructuring their thoughts maybe. Seeing that you are somebody of, somewhat of an authority, somewhat of an, educational background in terms of that kind of a topic, preferably if you have trained others to also the quote unquote promised land, and they can see that what you're doing, then perhaps they'll at least give it a go. Coaches are very hard to change, because especially the old school ones, they're very much stuck in their ways. But it's just an educational process, whether it's through social media, whether it's through conversations that you have one-on-one, or whether it's through proving it to them when you actually, if you do actually compete or participate in the said sports, whether it's BJJ or boxing or what have you, they can feel the difference physically, and they thought they would give you a little bit more of a problem, or you'd be a little bit less of a problem than you actually were, and they start to think, and eventually they come around.
So showing them with actions rather than words.
Correct.
Got it. Sean?
From my experience, I think probably if we're talking from an athlete's point of view and where they get their training wrong, there is some transfer from what Amir was talking about, in regards to your field and court sport athletes. I think it's our job to to try to educate. But things I would see is, for example, probably a lack of understanding in regards to truly what the physiological components of fitness are. So, say for example, somebody saying, you know what, I want to get stronger, so they'll head into the weights room and they'll be doing they might have a moderate weight on the bar and do 3 sets of 12, and probably sort of have a bit of a mismatch in regards to what their true goal is. And the way that they're training in regards to, say, for example, the true measure of maximal strength is being able to produce force for 1 or 2 maximal, efforts. So, and then being scared of, say, for example, or just unsure of how to load themselves properly from that point of view, or saying they want to go get faster, so they'll go do 3 1K time trials and things like that as well. Whereas, as opposed to making themselves faster, they are certainly increasing their endurance base, but not necessarily hitting the physiological component of fitness that they are aiming to hit. So just a bit of a mismatch in probably their knowledge and what they're implementing. That would be number one. Number two, if you're talking it's probably out on the track or within the weights room, I think rest times are done really, really poorly. You have some guys that come through here and they might have 8 exercises in their program. Let's say, for example, they've got sort of 4 lots of supersets, which is a pretty sort of normal program that we might roll somebody through. And I might not be out on the floor. I might be sort of at the desk or something along those lines, and they head out into the gym floor and they come back 25 minutes later and I'll say, you've done already, and they've just whipped through with no rest time. They've done squats to box jump, squat to box jump, squat to box jump, straight into RDL to Nordics, RDL to Nordics. They've just had no rest in between. So they're not sort of maximising what they're going to get out of that program as well. So education from that point of view. And probably conversely, on the same end of the scale, there are others that'll do a set of squats and a set of box jumps, and then they'll shoot hoops for 25 minutes after that, you know what I mean? And then they'll get on to the next set. So you probably see both ends of the scales there. And probably number 3 that I see from an athlete's point of view is just the influence of social media. Let's say I saw LeBron doing this, so like I must do this. And if you've seen LeBron's socials, he does some pretty out there shit. But yeah, so those are probably the main 3 from an athlete's point of view, is just understanding what you want to get out of the training and the implementation of whether that is time frames or sets and rep ranges, the rest times, and also the exercise selection. From a coaching point of view, probably something that Lockie's touched on previously is, I think, over-individualisation and changing exercises for the sake of changing exercises. I've certainly probably I've talked about before, maybe a big 9. I reckon there's a big 10 movement patterns that we can go through afterwards that I think that are vital in most court and field sports. I think maybe if you're looking at track and field, that's where it gets a bit different, and combat sports as well. But certainly when I'm training rugby players, netballers, footballers, basketballers, there are sort of a set 10 that build the foundation, probably 80% of my program. And then there's a little bit of individualisation in that last 20%. And then I reckon just communication is probably the other one, or ability to create buy-in from the athletes. I reckon there's a lot of very, very smart coaches out there that just don't have the personality to be able to get their athlete on board. And although what on paper is a fantastic program, it's having no impact because it's not being done properly or at all by the athlete they're trying to program for, whether that be a lack of personality or charisma or personal skills. So that's probably there's 3 major issues I see on the athletes end, and probably 2 from a coaching point of view.
Okay. Unless, Amir, you have any thoughts, I have a couple follow-ups.
Hit me.
How do you guys establish buy-in and trust with your clients and athletes?
I think it's multifaceted. One is, and it's one of the low-hanging fruits, is a proven track record, right? Because, I mean, nowadays, especially with social media and stuff like that, anybody who's coming on board to join a gym or get a coach, is doing their research. They're looking around, they're looking at your profile, looking at another person's profile, asking around, and so on and so forth. So if you've taken the time to build that profile and show what you've been doing and the results you've been getting, surely they can see that, and that will, you know, influence them to listen to what you have to say. The other one is, and this is a big one, but it's kind of easy, but it's kind of hard to develop. It needs a bit of experience. It's just being able to relate to people, being able to be a coach, because people have different personality types, and some coaches are very rigid, and they're kind of like, this is who I am, this is how I do it, whether you like it or not. And that's fine, because maybe they're totally fine with turning some people away, or some people being turned off by that and not coming on board. But some coaches are a little bit more tuned in, socially speaking. And so they know that, for example, somebody's personality type is the type that likes to be a little bit more aggressive with training. Somebody else maybe is a little bit more cautious and nervous and neurotic. So, for example, putting in heavy top sets, heavy loads in all the time actually makes them stressed out. It affects their sleep. It affects their performance in the gym. It affects a lot of things. So being smart enough to not need to verbalize any of that stuff, but actually change the program to suit that personality type, right? So what happens is this bond gets created with the client, and they trust that you understand them. You feel their pain. You feel, without needing to discuss things or verbalize things, what they're good at, what they're bad at, what needs to go, how fast they need to go, how slow they need to go. And so they're like, this guy understands me. This guy gets me. And so, you know, there's that connection and that trust. Another one that's a really easy one that not enough people do is just encouragement, you know, building confidence. It is so important as a coach to build confidence in an athlete, and that is on all fronts, in the sense of the program that you give them, making sure that in the earlier days of the cycle that you are giving them, it's weights that there are weights that they can definitely, for example, they can successfully complete those sessions, feel good about it, not piece easy, but certainly something that if they applied themselves enough, they could do it. There's no problem. There's no danger of failing and doing bad and having bad sessions and injuries and things like that. And then backing that up with the language that you use when you communicate with them, you know, telling them that was excellent, really good technique. You know, this part was good. Do this, and it'll be a little bit better. If you can try and do this instead, it will be much better. It'll be perfect. And you know, your lifts are looking so good compared to like 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. You're doing great. You know, things like that. It's free, man. Like, it doesn't cost anything for you to do that, for you to say that. You know, like it goes a long way, a huge way. Confidence in a client, athlete, lifter, whatever it is, whoever you're working with. If you are inspiring confidence in them, that gets them to trust you. They're associating those feelings with you, you know. And I'm not saying to be fake. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying point out whatever the good that they are doing. Some coaches don't even do that, you know. They just point out the negative. That's not good. Don't do this, you know. What are you doing? Why are you even bothering with that? You know, some people talk like that to their clients, and I don't get it. Like, and then they wonder why they can't get any clients.
I think that's so important what you just said. It's something I've really tried to focus and hone in on in the last probably 2 years, is we don't give a lot of positive reinforcement as a collective coaching culture. We always like improvement, excellence, technique, refinement, this, that, the other. And then we forget that our role is also boosting and facilitating the self-efficacy and self-esteem of our client through authentic positive reinforcement, like you were saying. So I think that's such a beautiful point that more young and just general coaches need to hear. So thank you.
I think first impressions are really important, and generally from a professional setting, the first thing we'll always try to do is sit down one-on-one with each of the athletes that you are going to be programming for over the next 6 to 12 months, for example. And especially in that first session, I think there's a bit of, and that first cycle of the program, a bit of give and take. In most cases, I'll say in the vast majority of cases, what is needed for the athlete and what the athlete wants is generally on the same pathway. Generally, they'll have trust and they'll be willing to sort of implement anything that you are ready to program for them. In some cases, you do come across some stronger-minded individuals, especially the further you go up the ranks, who may have had a coach that they previously really resonated with, or may have done a training program that they got a lot out of and now sort of insisted that's the only type of training they ever wanted to be. So I would say in that first sort of initial catch-up that we have, I'll get to know them a little bit more, but asking questions like, what's your favourite exercise? What's your favourite type of training? What's your least favourite type of training? Are there any exercises that you hate completing? So, for example, when I first got the role with the Crows AFLW girls, I know that certainly in one of the earlier phases of my program, trap bar deadlifts was one of the foundations just to sort of begin with. And almost every girl, let's say 75% of the girls, in some sense, said that they disliked completing trap bar deadlifts or had a bad experience where they'd been trying to complete them by themselves in the off-season and injured their backs. If I hadn't asked those questions and programmed those in, my guess is that I would have got off on the wrong foot and maybe would have struggled to have the same buy-in as opposed to, you know what, let's think of an alternative to that now. So we're fortunate enough at the club to have belt squats, or some girls did leg press instead, or some girls just did a barbell box squat as opposed to, so they're still getting some, I guess we were using it as a knee flexion extension exercise as opposed to a hip hinge. So I think that first initial phase that you're right for them is vital. And, you know, if they say bicep curls is my favourite exercise, find a way to sneak that into there somehow. Still tick off all your big necessities, but you want them to realise that you are listening to what they're saying and that you genuinely care about their enjoyment of the program too. So that would be my biggest advice, is have that initial meeting, have certainly in mind what you want to be implementing, but be willing to have a little compromise if you need to in order to rope them in. And you know what, eventually, if say, for example, where you want them to be and where they're at or where they want to be is so far apart, come up with a plan of attack. Each cycle is going to be a small little progression towards your point of view as opposed to theirs. It's still going to give them little doses, and eventually you're going to build that reputation with them, or build that relationship with them, that they'll be willing to give a little bit more each time. They might not even notice that all of a sudden somebody who said, you know what, I hate heavy lifting, I don't get anything out of heavy lifting. You've started them with 4 sets of 12 for every exercise in their first program. And then next program is 12, 10, 8s. And then the next program, they're just doing 4 sets of 8. And the next program, they're doing 8, 6, 5, you know what I mean? So over the sort of the sequence of 4 programs, you've progressively increased their load, but they probably don't realise it as much as, you know what, first program we're doing 5x5 girls, let's go. And I'm thinking, what this guy's a prick. Like, he doesn't listen to us at all. So that would be my advice.
That's the art of coaching. Like, that's
absolutely.
That's when you have to deviate from the perfect sets and reps and schemes and programs and have to be willing to concede and humble yourself in the face of your authority for the greater good and the long-term enjoyment as well. Because if the person's not adherent, nothing happens. There's no result.
Absolutely. I think we've talked about it before, but a poor program done consistently is much better than a perfect program done inconsistently. Comes down to that, easy as that. Absolutely.
Matt has a question on the social media stuff, and actually it's something I wanted to ask as well. So Sean, you brought about LeBron doing the type of out there exercises, and we see this all throughout sport. Is that more through the perspective of exercises being irrelevant that a guy like LeBron may be doing, or stuff that people are seeing on social media? Is that it is irrelevant, therefore a difference in coaching methodologies, or more so just the exercise selection from beginner versus elite?
I think probably more leaning towards the second point there, beginner, when you're talking about sort of some people probably jumping a few steps ahead, but also probably where I'm talking about is bang for buck. Essentially, let's say, for example, if you're talking about LeBron or an AFL player that you might see doing some sort of specky exercise. Essentially, at the end of the day, they are full-time athletes, and if there is any scope to be branching out into those really sort of extravagant, balanced, banded Bosu ball exercises, not that I sort of really essentially believe they're ever needed, but let's just say, for example, there is some sort of need for that. They probably have the time for it. For somebody, in most cases, 99% of the population who are watching these videos and train 3 times a week, for example, and then have to go work a full-time job, I just believe that there's so many more effective or more impactful exercises that you can be completing, making the most of your time. Go do a hip thrust, for example, as opposed to doing a single leg kettlebell swing while being pushed over by 3 bands that are pulling in different directions. You know, I think it's just more bang for buck, people jumping ahead a few steps and forgetting that, you know what, these guys can add some more subtleties into their program simply because they've got the time for it. And you know what, they're going to spend the rest of the day recovering in their Normatec boots and then going for a swim in their pool and then maybe sitting in their sauna and getting a massage. Whereas Johnny is going to be going to lug around some timber and then go home and pick up his 2-year-old daughter and then cook spaghetti for his family and get to bed at 11 p.m. at night and get up at 3 o'clock ready to go again the next morning. So bang for buck, ability to sort of add those subtleties in there probably isn't the same scope for 99% of the population. And let's be honest, a lot of it is just bullshit anyway. But if we're putting that aside, those other points are very relevant.
Context matters.
Absolutely. You just summarized it in 2 words.
Amir, do you have any thoughts on that? Or...
Yeah, I agree. It's exactly what he said. It's what you said the second time around. So it's they're noticing somebody like LeBron or you know, in the case of lifters, for example, a famous powerlifter or something like that, and they're like, okay, he's doing those stuff, so I'm going to be doing those stuff because he's strong and he's doing those stuff, or he's a good basketball player and he's doing those stuff, so that must be the stuff to do. The thing is, there's two sides to that. One is that the question you should really be asking is, what was that person doing when they were at the same training age and experience as you are now?
Thank you, yes.
And then doing that thing, because you're looking essentially ahead in time when you're looking at them. You're looking at where you would be, or you should be, hopefully, 20 years from now, doing your sport, you know, consistently. So you should be finding out what they were doing that when they were at the same training age as you are now, and doing that stuff. The other thing is, even if they were doing that thing, however stupid it is, for decades, the reason why they're LeBron is because they are one in a billion, 1 in 8 billion, in fact. And you are not. You're not 1 in 8 billion. Sorry to say, you don't have those same genetics. You don't have the same capabilities. You're just not that person. So that person could have been just sitting there, like imagining shooting a basketball, 3-pointers all day, and they'll still probably be where they are now. Maybe a couple of notches down, but they'll still be playing in the NBA. You know, it's because that's just how they're built, and you're probably not built that way. So have a look at the majority. Don't have a look at that one guy outside of the bell curve and see that he's doing this kind of stuff. What's everybody else doing? What's the majority of people doing? And do that stuff. Like there's a guy called I forget his name, but his business is called Functional Patterns. I don't know if you guys have heard of it or not.
Naudi.
That's it.
Christian has had some experiences with him
Yeah.
going back and forth.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I remember that now.
There you go.
So like, there's for example a very like a world class wrestler who trains with him, who does all that stuff. And so people will equate that. Go, well, look, this guy's doing his stuff, and he's a world class wrestler. The guy would have been a world class wrestler. Doesn't matter what he would have done. He would have still been a world class wrestler. It's not because of this guy. It's not because of his like training methodology. And maybe these training methodologies work, although it's doubtful if they're the most efficient way of doing things. But that's for another topic. It's just that these people, you got to understand that you're looking at the best in the world. You're looking literally at 1 in 8 billion, and there's a reason why they're there. And even if they're not 1 in a billion, if there's somebody you just aspire to be to, somebody who's just at your local BJJ club or whatever, don't look at what he's doing now and try to emulate that. Ask him what he was doing when he was at your experience level and do that.
Well said. I mean, those people are often successful not because of their specialized training, but in spite of it. So, meaning they'll be successful regardless of the varied stimulus, this, that, or the other.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Have you guys ever seen a breakdown? And this is outside of training, but probably along the same lines in regards to, from a technical point of view, and you're talking about that 1 in 8 billion, for example. Have you guys ever seen a breakdown of Usain Bolt's sort of first 4 steps when he broke the world record? And actually how far out of perfect technique that is. Like it's actually quite a sort of ugly first few steps. And obviously, I guess outside of that, he ended up breaking the world record. But it would be like, for example, now everybody trying to learn that poor running gait in order to emulate what Usain Bolt achieved that day. As you said, regardless if he's doing it perfectly or imperfectly, he was going to break it that day anyway.
Well, that's a great example, because if you didn't look at the micro, if you just looked at Usain Bolt's sprint and you wanted to you want to be Usain Bolt, and you tried to analyze every thing that he did, you would assumingly try to mimic his entire technique from start to finish, but then you would miss out on the important context that he's actually one of the slowest starters, and that what he's best at is from about the 40, 50, 60 plus meter mark, where he just deaccelerates the latest and reaches a higher top speed. So those are different things.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Boys, to finish off the conversation, I want to kind of paint this little metaphor. If you guys were to write a book, the book of Adonis, the book of PEAQ, okay, what would the main principles, values, and chapters be in that book? Say, for example, you knew you were going to die in a week, but you have to pass on your principles of PEAQ and Adonis. What are they?
All right. Well, I actually, in a sense, during that brief little lockdown we had, and I know it's been something we've been talking about for a little while now, in a very, very small sense, I've put together a little presentation. I'm just going to put some audio over it and keep it on your inbox, Alex, because I'm going to be sending it through. I'd love you to review it, and I want your honest opinion. I'll send it to all the Orphic crew as well.
Thanks, man.
We'd love some genuine feedback. I guess number one, I think chapter 1 would be, regardless of whether it's with coaching, whether it's with training, whether it's with eating, whether it's with your career, is I think consistency trumps everything. I know it's something we probably touched on briefly before, but I just see so many people that will go hell for leather at a diet. They'll go hell for leather at their training. They'll go hell for leather at a business venture for 3 to 6 months and then burn out and stop. And then 3 to 6 months later, they're on something new or they're trying it again. And there's just sort of this undulation. There's no consistency. I think that doing something, just rocking up consistently or just eating consistently over a long period of time, or as we talked about before, completing just an average program consistently over time, I think is just so vital for success in any aspect of life. We could literally talk about any aspect of life and consistency. If you are open at random hours with your business, you're going to create confusion with your customer base, and they're going to become unsure and go to somewhere else that they know is going to be open, things like that as well. So consistency would be chapter one. If we're talking about a programming point of view, at the moment, what I would say is, as we talked about before, get the foundations correct and get bang for buck out of your training. Don't worry about doing all these little subtleties. Generally, if we're talking about my Big 10 at the moment, how we would work it from a peak perspective, and you'll see this in our PowerPoint, is that we have our initial consultation, probably primarily if we're talking about field and court sport, sort of team sport athletes. From there, once we've done our assessment, I'll assess what their ability is to be able to squat properly, hinge properly, lunge properly. We say hip extension or thrust properly, vertically push, horizontally push, vertically pull, horizontally pull, rotate and anti-rotate. That'll be the Big 10 of any program, of any team or court sport athletes that come through here. There are probably 30 different variations of all 10 of those exercises. Selecting the appropriate variation is where your instinct comes in as a coach and your ability to evaluate what their ability is upon assessment. And then you can put in all your little sort of subtleties around that to complement. So say, for example, with your hip hinging movements, you might select a knee dominant hamstring exercise to complement it nicely, or with say for example, with your hip extension or hip thrust exercises, you might add an abduction exercise to complement that, because they're the two primary movement patterns of the glutes. So I would say now the Big 10. So that would probably form the crux of the principles of the PEAQ book. I think is consistency, get bang for your buck, nail the Big 10, and then add in accessories around that. That'd probably be the goal, I reckon.
Beautiful. Time to start writing, Sean.
I think so.
Amir?
For me, it comes around the intangibles, a lot of it for me. Right at the top would be having rules and order in the facility and enforcing them, no matter what you think may happen. Like if people are going to leave or not going to like that or whatever, just having a set of rules and regulations that you stand by, and you won't allow anybody to break, because it has to be a place where everybody can come in there and equally be able to reach for the stars, be whoever they want to be as good as they can be. And if there's going to be a bunch of people in there that are running amok or pretending like they're better than everybody else because they got a couple of extra medals or anything like that, then they simply got to go. So having order, having rules and regulations of the highest ranking person or lifter or client or athlete to the lowest ranking. Everybody got to put their weights away. Everybody got to respect the coaches. Everybody got to respect each other. And if anybody doesn't, they get shown the door. And to make that part of the culture, it's got to really be part of the culture. I think a lot of personal trainers, coaches, gym owners are afraid of losing members because they think, well, it's hard getting a member, and that actually starts to hurt the gym in the long run, because the environment gets bad, it becomes toxic, and one person can be like a cancer cell, and they can infect the others, and before you know it, everybody wants to leave because they don't enjoy where they're training. So you might as well just organize things and settle things as soon as you notice any signs, rather than wait it out.
Can we dig into that? How do you establish those boundaries, rules, and responsibilities from the beginning?
A very, very, very good question, and very easy, very simple. So when somebody signs up, they're explained those key rules and regulations from the get-go. and they're explained what happens if they don't do it, and not in any particular like intimidating way. They just get told, right? Like as a matter of fact, we've gone away. And through it all, if they do slip up, which people do, we're humans, they get notified. And if it's a repetitive thing, then they're just simply asked to leave. Simple as that. And that's very important in order to be able to look. Culture is very important. For us, it's very important. I'm sure for Sean, for all the guys here that were not even here now, very important. It's got to be protected at all costs, because people need to enjoy where they're training. And if all of a sudden somebody, and I'm not saying everybody has to be in agreement or everybody has to like each other, because that's just not going to happen, right? Different personality types, et cetera, et cetera. But everybody's got to respect the place, and everybody's got to respect each other. So that's got to be protected all the time from day one. And there's got to be very clear indication to anybody who joins the gym or works with you that these are the types of things that you just simply will not tolerate. So they know where they stand in that regards. Because then it can start to become a mess, you know, it just turns into a zoo, and then it gets really hard to control. So that's probably the very first thing. And you know, tying in with that would be the ability of the coaches to be coaches, to be able to motivate people, to be able to talk to people, to have coaching skill and ability. As you were saying before, the science of it is one thing, but there's also the art to coaching in regards to managing people, managing personalities, multiple different personalities, and being able to get people all on the same page, and you know, working towards the same thing. That's extremely important. Then off the back of that, everything else that's that is more tangible can be built. You know, the third thing I would say is having the messaging of it's okay, and you should push yourself to be comfortable being uncomfortable. You know, like a lot of times, people like lifters say, for example, they want their favorite bar to be available before they'll do their top set, before they start their training. They want their favorite platform to be free before they start their training. They want their favorite music to be playing before they go for their set or whatever. All of these stuff you're not understanding, you're not realizing, you're actually making yourself weaker and weaker because everything has to be right. And so what happens is, in a competition scenario, things are just not going to be like that. You're not going to have your favorite bar. You're not going to be called at exactly the time that you want to go. You're going to be put in pressure situations, and you're going to fold. So that type of a character building has to be built into the facilities. You know, the coach has got to encourage people to get into places just outside their comfort zone and continuously expand that. Those are the most important things, because everything other than that is easily teachable, like how to do a program, how to write a diet, and things like that. But those are the things that are missed oftentimes, and they can get huge results. You know, like some places, certain gyms, for example, that are in outback Mongolia, you know what I mean, or somewhere in Africa where they're just training on dirt ground, but these guys are just hard, man. They're tough as nails, you know. And you're just not going to win against somebody like that if you ever get into a competitive situation or scenario, and you want your Eleiko bar and your Eleiko plates and your this or that, you know. There's nothing wrong with those. They're fine. You should have the best equipment if you can get access to them. That's all well and good. But it's just, I'm coming from a different place. Some people just get what I'm saying, and some people won't get what I'm saying. Some people may take offense to what I'm saying. That's fine. They're just going to keep getting their asses kicked probably.
There's a danger in becoming reliant on the predictable and the comfortable, because life is inherently chaotic. And if there's anything, is that there's been an entire generation that has been exposed to that this year. And those people who suffered the most, arguably, were not prepared.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe it's because of that complacent way of living. And I recognize it, what you're saying, in myself, because I've been that type of person who's like, all right, you got to have the like, music is a big thing for me. But like, I catch myself, and you're right. It's like, shit, the perfect song can't always be playing. Sometimes you just got to rip the headphones off and just, talk to your own demons inside of you.
Yeah, exactly, man. You just got to get on with it. You got to figure out a way to be self-reliant, instead of relying on things in the environment all the time. But that's just my view, That's how we've been doing things. Maybe it's the wrong way. I don't know.
No, that's you're only sharing your perspective, whether it's valuable or not. That's dependent on the person.
Exactly.
Guys, thank you. Again,
Thank you.
For the pleasure of these conversations. I look forward, and I said this once before, but I'm going to sit you all down, or at least each of you one-on-one down eventually, and do this in person on my one. But do you guys have any last parting thoughts, comments, asks of the people listening? Anything you want to leave them with to finish off this year?
Sean, you go first, mate.
Yeah, no, I think always be pretty much sort of stemming on from what you guys were saying, but always be ready to adapt, be versatile as much as you can. Try to look on there's always a brighter side. Like we're so fortunate to be in an amazing country. We still do keep in contact with guys we've worked with in India, for example, that are just an absolute mess at the moment and probably isn't reported as much, but like we couldn't be more fortunate to be where we are, really, despite what has happened with lockdowns and things like that as well. So there's always a way that we can work around things. Don't be a victim. Make sure that you always put things into perspective. And I know everybody's sort of saying, can't wait for 2020 to be over, to get ready for 2021. I guess essentially, who says that 2021 is going to be any different at all?
Exactly.
It's literally a date on a calendar. I don't see what the difference between December the 10th, 2020 and January the 3rd, 2021 is really. Look, we could be battling this thing for a very long time. So just always be prepared. Maybe if you aren't prepared or you felt like you could have done things better depending on wherever you are in Australia at the moment, reassess your processes right now. Put into action. What are the things that I would do if at any stage our local government came back on the screen and said, you know what, you guys aren't allowed outside your houses, your businesses are closed, you got to be done by midnight tonight. Would you be ready? So that would be sort of my closing sort of probably statements in regards to the situation we're at the moment. But just keep enjoying the ride, and I also want to thank you guys as well for an amazing 2020. It's been awesome to be able to run our first Orphic course and been loving every second of it. I have to double check. I think we've got about 4 weeks left now. Obviously, there's been a bit of interruption, so that's why I just need to absolutely confirm how many weeks we've got left of it. But I can just see those guys just blooming at the moment. Like, certainly it's been a journey, and some have probably excelled further than others, depending on prior experience and things like that as well. But it's been a pleasure, and I think if anything else has really helped me to solidify my knowledge and continue to reevaluate our processes, because we're now passing that on to the next generation of coaches as well. So can't wait for this crew to graduate and then hopefully take on another bunch of eager students going into next year. I think I was talking to the guys, we've already got a few enrolled, so it seems to be ticking along really nicely, and I hope that they get as much out of it as I did, because I feel like I'm getting plenty out of it for sure. Thank you so much for your support, guys. I appreciate it.
It's amazing. Awesome, Sean.
Yeah, I would probably back up what Sean said in regards to, especially like don't take it one day at a time. Think ahead. Don't be reactive. Be proactive. And every day, ask yourself, where do you want to be? Who do you want to be? And did you do anything that day to get yourself there? At least that's the question I ask myself, and that's the question I tell anybody who comes to me with similar sort of question to ask themselves every day. So it's helped me in my time be able to always correct course and make sure it makes me self-aware of what I'm wasting time on. If I wasted a day, if I did activities that weren't really important, that were a bit of a waste of time, and then how to correct that for the following day to come. So as he said, as Sean said, yeah, it's just another date on the calendar. You don't know if next year's going to be good or not. So instead of just sort of being complacent and be like, okay, well, it looks like we're out of it now. Instead, just think to yourself, what did you want to do this year, or who do you want to be? If you get this chance back now and we get rid of it early next year, vaccines coming out and everything is good. Let's just say, for example, what do you want to do? How are you going to make up for lost time and start planning all that stuff? So instead of just letting each day pass, that's what I would say.
All right. I like it. That's a great way to end, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the year. Keep killing it.
Yeah.
You too.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. That is it. Another Orphic podcast with Amir and Sean from our two partner facilities that we govern and run and deliver our Cert 3 and 4 out of. Amir is in Sydney, New South Wales. Sean is in South Australia, in Adelaide, and they are doing a phenomenal job running their gyms, delivering our courses, and we couldn't be, that's the thing. We couldn't be more pleased and proud to be able to offer such a high quality education through such high quality facilities and coaches and educators. We feel so fortunate to be able to partner and work with such high level professionals alike to pretty much no one in this country. I mean, who else? I mean, the majority is not aligning themselves with this level of professionalism and quality. And let's raise the standard. That should be the standard. Let's keep going. Let's keep leading by example. And just very proud and honored to be able to conduct these conversations. And I hope you guys continue to get value out of them as we go along throughout our journey and growing. We'll see you guys next week for another one. I'm Alexander Emmanuel Sandalis. You can find me all over the internet if you want. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next week.